Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Milwaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
You're listening to Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. This is one of our favorite conversations from WUWM's daily talk show, Lake Effect.
Wisconsin's population grew by 3.6% in the last census, but that data also shed light on another reality. The state's youth population is continuing to decline. It's been a trend that's played out slowly over the last 2 decades, but now that trend is accelerating, especially here in Milwaukee. John Johnson is a research fellow at the Marquette Law School Lubar Center, and he recently published data on Milwaukee's so-called baby bust. He joins Lake Effect's Joy Powers to talk about it and what the baby bust could mean for the city's future.
What is a baby bust?
So we're seeing fewer and fewer babies born in Milwaukee each year, which is not in itself a surprise because the number of births is declining pretty much everywhere. But it's happening pretty quickly here, more quickly than I expected. So the number of babies born last year in the city of Milwaukee was about 7,400, a little less than that. That's down 5% from 2024. It's down 15% from 2020 and 29% fewer than in 2010.
So this is really the opposite of, let's say, a baby boom. Are there explanations for what we're seeing? Because as your data found, this is a trend that's happening kind of everywhere, but in the city of Milwaukee, we're really outpacing the trend. Yeah,
there's 2 things contributing to this. One of them is that moms are having fewer babies. Fewer people are having babies, and then people who do have babies are usually having fewer of them. So that's happening, and it happens at different times for different groups. So like we saw the birth rate for white mothers fall pretty quickly, and then we're seeing a similar thing happen for Black moms and Latino moms. So you see these things happen at different times for different racial groups, and because of the composition of racial groups in Milwaukee being different than, say, the suburbs of the rest of the state, the timing is a little different in the different places. So that's part of it. But the speed at which it is happening in Milwaukee suggests to me that we're also seeing this as the result of people moving out of the city before they start families. So like over the course of the 2010s, we had this big drop in the number of babies born in the city of Milwaukee, whereas the number of babies born to moms living in the suburbs stayed the same across the decade.
What's the upshot here? You know, what's the impact on Milwaukee? Fewer babies. That information by itself feels pretty neutral.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a thing that is true about the world, but it has some important repercussions, beginning with hospitals that deliver babies. So, you know, we saw a maternity ward shut down on the south side a couple of years ago. I believe there was some reporting from WWM on that. And then you see this with daycares. I don't have great data on this yet, but I have noticed anecdotally I'm at that stage of life where many people I know are having babies. And I've talked to a lot of people who've had a really easy time getting into daycare, which is not something I've traditionally heard. But I know of multiple daycares that have no waiting list at all, some that don't even staff all of their newborn rooms because they don't have demand for it right now. And then, of course, we see this in schools as well. So first grade enrollment has fallen a lot, tracking with the lower number of kids born 6 years earlier. In a bigger picture, it's not entirely clear what this means for Milwaukee overall, this pattern of declining birth rates across the board, because in other countries, like Japan, for instance, the birth rate is lowest in the cities and higher in the rural areas. But the population of the rural areas is falling while the cities are staying stable or even growing. And that's because the people who are born in rural areas, when they grow to be young adults, they frequently move to the city. So how this plays out in the long run is sometimes counterintuitive.
But one of the things your article mentions is really the impact on schools. So yes, when people get older, they may be moving to Milwaukee, but if they're not staying here to have kids, What is the impact that has on our school systems?
Yeah, just fewer kids attending school. So we see this, it's a pretty direct relationship, and it happens quite consistently. Fewer kids are born. We know that we have a net outflow of children ages 0 to 5 in Milwaukee. More of them move out of the city than move in. Their families move out of the city. And so the number of sixth graders that we get is always less than the number of kids born in the city 6 years earlier. And this always affects each kind of school. It happens across sectors. So here we have a lot of private schools and charter schools and then district schools. It's going to affect all of them. And it means that the conversations you hear about school consolidation and school closings and MPS they've got to happen. There just aren't as many kids as there used to be. And all signs point to there being fewer in the future. That doesn't make the importance of education less. It doesn't mean that we need to spend less money on that. My fear is that we'll be spending all of this money maintaining buildings instead of educating kids, because the buildings were built for a time when we had many, many more students than we do now.
So when I look at this issue, I see a lot of solutions that really rely on more federal or state policy changes. These are things like, subsidizing childcare in different ways, making it easier to have children. Most of those solutions are going to really lie in the hands of people at the state or federal level. Is there anything to try to reverse or even just blunt this trend at the city level?
Yeah, the simplest solution is immigration, which rests with the federal government as well, to your point. But what the city can do is focus on the reasons why young families are net leavers of the city instead of movers here. So, yeah, you're not really going to drive the birth rate up, particularly at a municipal level, but you can affect some of the reasons that so many families feel like when they're planning on having a kid or right after they've had a kid that now's the time they need to leave the city. I think focusing on school quality is a really important way to do that. Again, focusing on the quality of schools and not maintaining the same number of school buildings to serve this dwindling number of students. And then, all the other kinds of quality of life issues that affect families, crime, housing quality, that kind of stuff.
For sure. Well, John Johnson, thank you as always for joining us here on Lake Effect.
It's always a pleasure.
John Johnson is a research fellow at the Marquette Law School Lubar Center. He joined Lake Effect's Joy Powers.
That was the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast. It comes from your local NPR station, WUWM. Subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast to hear more great stories about Milwaukee. Want to hear more great stories about Milwaukee? Subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast. Lake Effect is a local show and podcast all about Milwaukee. Hear it on the radio at noon, Monday through Friday on 89.7 WUWM. And subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast to hear some of the best content from the show.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.